Engine man can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's Can't out? Even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of A View from the Top Floor. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast where we're discussing current topics, tactics, and dilemmas that's plaguing the American fire service. It has a no-fluff type of all-business attitude. We push the limits on some hot-button issues, as well as we shed some light on trending issues that many in the fire service kind of shy away from. And if you've been following the podcast or listening, truly thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's getting bigger, it's growing, and that only comes from the support of you, the listeners. So my guest today, this one's a special one for me. This is a dear, dear friend of mine, an incredible mentor of mine, and just a true brother of the fire service. Pete Partridge, Newark Fire Department, SOC Battalion Chief. He retired 20 years ago. But within those 20 years, Pete has been a student of the game, and you'll get that very quickly when we dive into this episode. So this is the first episode of a two-part series, and I think there's so much value in sitting down with Pete and just hearing him discuss not only the traditions and the pride where he came from and where he was brought up through the fire service, but where he is today and how he still is a student and where he brought the fire service. He made it an intellectual type career where at one time, blue collar, that's a term that's thrown around in the fire service. And when you talk to Pete, you realize very quickly, yes, Pete worked with his hands and he's a legendary firefighter, but there's nothing blue collar about Pete when you start talking. He's very intellectual. Again, true student of the job. So Pete Partridge, Newark Fire Department. He did 19 years in the rescue alone. Retired as a SOC Battalion Chief. He was the first Battalion Chief in the Special Operation Commands for the city of Newark. And those of you that aren't familiar with the city of Newark, it is a very, very busy city in the tri-state area, right in the shadows of New York City. And when I say shadows, it's just because it's right outside the city. They're doing a tremendous amount of work today. But even back when he was there in the war years, they were doing work that it's off the charts when you start looking at the numbers compared to what other cities were doing. Even in New York City, the Newark Fire Department, right outside New York City, but doing the same numbers, if not more, than many of the companies. And he was a part of all that. So I hope you really enjoy the episode. Again, Pete is a tremendous man, great friend of mine, and a true brother of the fire service. So here's part one of a two-part series. Pete Partridge, Newark, New Jersey, Rescue Company 1, SOC Battalion Chief. This is a long time coming.
Yep.
Can we talk about your alias name?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been posting too prolifically lately, but I kind of took the summer off and I'm back a little bit now, but if I have something to say, I say it. If I don't, I don't post for the sake of posting.
Yeah.
You know what
Fire
I mean?
Captain Kangaroo.
Fire Captain Kangaroo, yeah.
Which I don't think you realize. I don't think you realize the impact you have on so many firefighters with your posts, because they are so real, they're so authentic, they're so you. And I think it was such a great way people getting into your world. And I think that's important because your generation set the standard for what we're trying to live up to today. And I really believe that. Let's talk about where you started. Obviously, Newark Fire Department. So what year did you get there?
No, I was a volunteer first, actually. I started in the volunteers in 1972, and I started in Newark in 1974. So this year is my 50th anniversary of starting on the job.
Wow.
And it's my 20th anniversary being out. I did 30 years. So those are big numbers.
Yeah. Did your years as you get out, did you slow down or speed up? Because when you're on the job, they say before you know it, it's over, and it's true.
Before you know it, it's over. That is absolutely true. But I'll tell you what, time is in the rearview mirror. It's just blowing by now, blowing by. So, I don't know if that's something that happens when you got more time behind you than you got in front of you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a natural thing or not, but That's what I'm encountering now. This summer just was gone in a flash,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, 20 years out, and it's pretty remarkable that you are still a student of the job.
I
Like,
am. I
you
know.
read every day something. And you probably, I mean, like everything else you take, it's like a roller coaster. It's up, it's down, emotional. You get angry, you get frustrated. I think we all do, but
Yeah.
you stay pretty on the game.
You know, this might not sound humble, but I think that's what does set me apart from other retired guys that are out as long as I am. A lot of guys leave the job and they bounce right into whatever teaching or consulting, and they just kind of go on for however many years after that, and it kind of peters off.
Yeah.
You know, and I was kind of the other way. I walked away completely when I got out, and I was away from it for years. Then I had my own fire, which, yeah, as you know, is what got me back into it, because basically the guys came and got me, and you know, they took care of me and they brought me back into it. So I had a lot to catch up on.
Yeah.
But really what got it going was the local guys in the town where I live asked me if I would mind doing some teaching for them. They all knew me from before the fire. You know, they more or less made it like, hey, we came to your fire, now you could return the favor. Yeah, I know. But I realized I had an awful lot of catching up to do. But I didn't mind at all. I just dove into it.
Yeah. I feel like,
And that's 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
So,
but a guy of your caliber, it's almost like you're a fine wine. Like you are getting better with ages. And when it comes to the wisdom of the fire service, I mean,
wow.
the amount of fires you went to in Newark during those years, it's, and
Yeah.
for those of you that don't know Newark, it was the capital of fire duty in the tri-state area, outside the 5 boroughs. But you're doing just as much work, if not more, than a lot of those companies. Just that it's a smaller city, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
We're so far removed from those times
yeah.
that it's hard for guys today, first of all, to imagine that kind of workload. But secondly, you know, as fire departments go, Newark is still pretty busy.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
yeah.
Patterson is busy. Newark is still pretty busy, but most of the guys currently involved in the fire service have no idea what went on in Newark all those years ago. You say Newark, I don't know what it means to most guys that are currently in the job now, but it certainly doesn't mean what it used to mean. Those
Well,
times are just so far removed now.
I think having Captain Mackey there, he's putting Newark back on the map. I feel even with the fire duty, but 18 engine there, they have their Instagram up. They're drilling, they're training, they're going to fires, and they're posting it, and they're getting Newark back to a level, I think, on a national level at least, that it should be, and it should have never fallen from there. But like with anything else, and fire service is like the ocean: tides go in, tides go out.
I mean, for a long time, we had several guys that were teaching out at FDIC that were on the lecture circuit. Mike Nasta comes to mind right away. He was very, very big in the teaching circuit back in the day. Harry Carter, who's gone now, was a prolific writer, wrote some books and constantly writing articles and so on. But, you know, Mike's also out at a job now and kind of doing, I think, other things. Harry's gone, and we still have guys that are out there teaching. Rich Mackey being a good example.
Yeah.
He's in Pennsylvania right now, teaching. He works for an outfit that does a lot of fire brigade training
Good,
with
yeah.
foam and stuff like that. And there are guys that were in the rescue with me that are still out there doing it, you know.
What year did you go to the rescue?
1981.
And there's one rescue in North, right?
Yeah.
Were they ever considering a second rescue during those years?
It has come up from time to time, and from what I understand, it came up not all that long ago.
Really?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on down there. And there's a huge change coming now because October 1st, next week, the public safety director and the assistant public safety director are both leaving. So there's going to be totally new leadership for police and fire.
Yeah. So you started in the engine company and then went to the truck, then the rescue?
Yeah, well, there was that little problem with EMS.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but you know, you know, they had taken over EMS in the fire department, and this is before I came on the job, and they made a lot of grandiose promises to guys in order to get them involved in it.
Mm.
And it turned out that EMS, you know, was not what it was cracked up to be. Those guys wanted to get out. They were told, oh, you're going to be paramedics, you're going to get a pay raise, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. None of it came to fruition. So they wanted to get out. So what do you do now? Probies, right? You know.
Yeah.
So, I did my time in there and I got out. And I went to 9-engine, which at that time was an extremely busy house. Single engine was an extremely busy house. So I was lucky to go there. And then actually I got lifted back into EMS temporarily. We had a job action and I participated in it. And well, it was one of these things where the whole job didn't 100% stick together.
Yeah.
So they were able to pick guys off,
Yeah, divide and conquer. That's what they
Yeah,
do,
yeah. So I was there again, and then EMS dissolved, and then I went to 7-engine, another extremely busy house, which at the time was in with 3-truck, which is gone, disbanded. And then I got laid off out of 7-engine. When I came back, I got assigned to 1-engine. I was there maybe about a year, and I went to 7-truck. And then I left 7-truck after about 4.5, close to 5 years, and went to rescue. And that's where I was all the way up until I made chief. I was 19 years in the rescue as a fireman and boss.
I can't even put, when you, like, I know this because I know you, but when you actually say it out loud, it's crazy to think about the amount of fires, not your entire, even just in those 19 years, what you did in that rescue. I mean, we went to every fire in the city during the busiest time in the history of the city. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's astonishing when you think about it. And so this is great though, because we talked about this. I mean, come on, we're going to talk tactics. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We have all these topics we want to get onto. But I think it's important that people know your history because you are active on Instagram. You are in the social media world. You have a voice in today's fire service with the first generation or the next generation coming on. And I think it's important that they know where your thoughts are coming from. They're not coming from some crazy guy pissed off at the world,
Some
right?
crazy old bastard.
Yeah.
Although I probably come over that way sometimes, honestly.
But like rightfully so. Like some of the topics that you cover are.
I mean, I'm not afraid to share my opinion.
But your opinion has so much value because I mean, what you just said, just your career alone gives you the ability to have that opinion. And I think that that's a problem with social media, like we've talked about, is that too many opinions out there with no one with not enough work backing, like so.
Well, and the other thing is too, I have a little mom and pop homepage, right? I'm not pushing any agenda. I'm not trying to be anybody or do anything. I'm not out on the circuit. I'm just there.
Yeah.
So I don't have to please anybody. I don't have to be politically correct. I don't have to do anything except say what's on my mind. And that's what I do.
You do. So what's on your mind? What topics in the fire service right now that you think about that are like, you know what? That's not how it used to be. This is the way it should be. And it's a shame that we're getting away from that. I know there's millions of them, but what's one that stands out to you right now?
Really where to start. Well, I guess.
Let's talk fireside, tactical wise, like something that you see that's going the wrong way with the fire service.
Well, and this, a lot of it is probably regional. A lot of it is probably based on experience, but, I see, in my opinion, a lot of departments just are either not even trying to be real aggressive or they're giving it an initial shot, but they're too quick to pull the plug.
Yeah.
That's one thing I see. Another thing I see is just plain incorrect tactics, whether it's in interior attack or an exterior attack. And this really does annoy me because we have all this social media going on now. And in my day, it was articles and books and classes. That was it, right? And the authors and the instructors were, a relatively small circle of people. Now everybody thinks they have a voice, right? But we have all of this going on social media. We have all these seminars and classes. We have everybody doing science and studies and everything. Most places can't put out a fucking fire.
You're right.
When all of that is said and done, what's the point?
Yeah.
Because, I'm still a buff and, I go watch fires. I see them on YouTube and I'm like, this is crazy. We're not anywhere, we're not, let alone the same page. We're not in the same book.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how that can be, with all the training and all the knowledge and everything that we allegedly, supposedly have working for us now. And basically, probably most of the fire service sucks. Can't put out a fire.
No,
I'm not kidding.
No, I know you're not kidding, and you're absolutely right.
And those are harsh words that a lot of people aren't going to like, but
it's the truth.
Let's get with it, guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it comes from a lot of having inexperience on the command staff level. Like you said, they're pulling the plug. So if you've never crawled down that hallway to know I can make one more room, you've never done that. Now you're on the outside. How are you going to let your men make that room?
Right.
2 more rooms, 3 more rooms. You've never done it. So you can't even comprehend what's going on inside that building and how easy sometimes putting a fire out can be.
Yeah.
If you just let the guys do it.
But that's true. And it's true from the back step on up to the command level that, lack of experience will definitely hinder your operation. My friend Chris, who
yeah.
who is, an instructor, but he's on the volleys locally. And he's also with Christiana. He kind of keeps me honest because a lot of times he'll call me up with a question and I'll say, well, this, that, and the other thing. And keeping in mind that I was a volunteer and I hang out in volunteer houses and I teach for them and everything. But he is kind of a sounding board in that he'll say, yeah, but don't forget, these are guys that go to 2 fires a year, 3 fires a year.
Yeah.
And so then, my position becomes, okay, so you don't know that you can make that long hallway. You don't know that you can make those last 2 rooms because you don't have the experience. That's one issue. But the other issue is you don't have the right tactics to begin with. You don't have the right idea to begin with of what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. So for me, that's kind of a dividing line. It's one thing to say, well, we don't know what we can do. We don't have the experience, this and that. Okay, fine. But at least when you show up, be tactically correct.
Mm-hmm.
Be making the right moves, be doing the right thing. If you get pushed out of the building and you gave it your best shot, I can't fault you, but, don't be doing a lot of the outright stupid things that I see happening.
Yeah, and I think, well, like you said, there's so much out there as far as training platforms, but the thing is, everyone has a voice, like you said, and like, how do you curb that? Who's vetting who, really? And that's the thing,
nobody's vetting anybody, and that's the problem. That's exactly the problem, because you got everything from guys who just know absolutely nothing to guys who know enough to be dangerous.
I think most are the guys that know just enough to make it dangerous for other people.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous thing for real.
And then you got people that are trying to punch way above their weight. Okay, you've been to a few fires, you're maybe even a boss, whatever, this and that, but don't try to come over like you did the Warriors in 31 Truck or something in the Bronx. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys try to pull that off, and it's not happening. They trip over their own feet, often when
I
they try
think
to
that a
do that.
problem we're having is just that, is where we're not going to the fire duty, and this is on a national level, but maybe the guys from your generation, a lot of this generation today, they're riding the coattails of the guys like yourself that came long, long before them. And it's only so far you can hold on to that coattail before it rips, And I think we're at that breaking point in the fire service in general that, like, you're losing grip. Like, it's starting to rip away now, and it's very evident now because we have social media, YouTube. You can see any fire, and now we're seeing these fires from cities that were very, very good at one time,
Yeah,
from towns that had a really good volunteer fire department, and now that they're being exposed, I think that that's where probably the anger for me, that's where it comes from. Because now you're being exposed, but no one's owning their mistakes. There's so much right in this job when you admit humility. I think humility is the core basis of the future of the fire service, because you have to be able to admit your mistakes to get better, right?
yeah,
The thing with your generation, though, is that you go to a fire 5 times, 6 times a night. So your first fire, you made a mistake. Your second fire, you're not going to make that mistake. Then by the 5th fire that night before you go home, you made a lot of mistakes, but you learned from every single one of them. So then your next tour in, you can kind of navigate
true.
those mistakes. I don't
That's
think we're
true.
making enough mistakes because we're not going to enough fires. But the fires we are going to, we're not admitting that we made a mistake.
Right.
And that's a problem.
And that's true. I mean, we did have that opportunity to immediately fix problems. The other side of the coin is, though, guys would go on vacation for 2 weeks and come back and say, I don't feel sharp anymore. I lost my edge after 2 weeks away. So what does that mean for a guy who's 2 months between fires?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's his edge? Where's his edge? You know what I mean? And that's not his fault. The fires aren't there. You can't go to fires that aren't there. Okay? But we got very good at what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. There are guys now who are still pretty good. They may not know all the little tricks and shortcuts and so on and so forth. They're still pretty good. But I'm thinking you really got to be on your toes now, because if we used to go on vacation for 2 weeks and come back and say, I don't feel sharp.
Yeah.
And this is where it comes in to play. Do you know what you don't know?
I think that you forgot most of what any other fireman will ever know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but, who knows? But
it's funny you say that. I was on vacation for 2 weeks, and my first set in was just the other day. I didn't feel sharp. It was just nothing that was like I made a big mistake. I just did not feel sharp. It wasn't even getting dressed. It just didn't feel natural. It's amazing what 2 weeks will do away. Just the little things,
Yeah. But I think this is a huge problem. Guys out there now don't know what they don't know. And that leads to, this cockiness.
Yeah.
This false sense of knowledge and experience, because who is there to tell them, hey, you don't know what you don't know? We've lost that buffer in most places of senior men who did more of the fire duty. And now we got a different problem, even in a department where you have senior men that can be pretty experienced. Everybody's tiptoeing around now. They don't want to get jammed up. They don't want to get lifted. They don't want to get sued, It's more difficult to take a probie in the corner now and say, you're fucking up. You're on the wrong track. Get back on the rails, because everything is, you can't say that to me. And, you're not my boss and this and that and the other thing. I think there's a lot of entitlement out there, which is not to paint everybody with a broad brush, because honestly, the guys that I know from Newark that are on the job right now, they're great and they're motivated. They're in good companies and they want to work.
I was just sitting on the bumper, my last set with a young fireman, and we were just talking. And it was kind of like picking his brain about what his career path is. And we were just making conversation. And I just kept saying how lucky and fortunate and grateful I am to work in the firehouse I work in, because the guys are that good. They're so good. And the senior guys are true senior guys. And he said to me, well, this is all I know. He goes, what's it like out there? I said, well, a lot of firehouses don't have fear anymore. this firehouse, my firehouse, there's a sense of fear that when those junior guys walk through that door and those senior guys are working, there's a level of respect, but there's also a level of fear. Once we lose the fear factor going to work, well, that's when the dominoes begin to fall the wrong way and places become shit firehouses because there's no fear. You should have a pit in your stomach for probably the first 5 to 8 years when you turn the corner and you see a certain couple cars. You'd be like, oh man, I got to work with this guy for 24 hours because you know you got to be on your game. There's no downtime, you know? And I think we're losing that fear. Like you said, guys are scared to step up and be that enforcer role. That's so important. That's what the senior man's role is, to keep people in order. And that comes down to the standard set by you, set by the senior guys in the generation below you that are my senior guys. Like, they set a standard in good places. And it's up to the middle management of that firehouse to maintain the standards so the next generation coming in, the young homies today, fall in line.
And there are some houses now where the attitude is shit.
Yeah.
You know, I'm lucky because, as I just said, the guys I know that are currently on the job that I associate with, they're good guys. But they talk about other houses within the job that they know of where everything is just more or less taken for granted. You owe me a paycheck. You owe me benefits. I'm going to do the bare minimum. I'm not a buff. I'm not into the job. That's bullshit. You know, that's not cool, whatever.
Yeah.
That attitude will get guys killed.
Yeah.
And it has. You know, I'm not here to tell stories out of school, but I know of fires, and you probably do too, where there were line of duty deaths that could have been prevented, not just in the sense of what tactics were employed at the fire or in terms of who was in charge or whatever, but because of shitty culture, refusal to learn, refusal to have the right attitude, refusal to do the right thing, has guys dead now that I personally know of. And if I could, I guess, travel through the fire service and have a magic wand to wave and convince guys, what I'm about to say is the one thing you need to know and live by. Be into this job. You don't have to be a buff, but be into the job, learn what you need to learn, take care of your gear, do the right thing, and keep your ass alive.
That's the best advice that anyone could ever get. And I'm so happy you just said that, because you just gave that advice to so many young firemen. I think that I think the tide has changed with that. And I think the positives of social media, guys are finding it to be okay to be somewhat into the job. Oh, they might not follow every social media training page, but they probably follow one or two where they can be just scrolling through in traffic or whatever they're doing. Oh, look at that. And it's a quick little segment on search or forcible entry or something that sharpens your skill. And I think that's the positives of social media. When you vet your own people and you follow the right accounts, right? So I'm not going down a list of people to follow or don't follow, but when you do your own homework and you vet certain people and you know that's good information, that's a positive of social media. So I do see the tide changing with that. But I would say 10 years ago, especially in my job, it was cool to not be into the job. And I can never wrap my brain around that.
That's just fucking stupid.
Yeah, and I really think that, honestly, I think that my job, especially my job, has changed for the better with that. I would say most guys, if not almost all of them, are truly into the job.
Just fucking stupid.
Yeah. And maybe I'm lucky and fortunate to work in places where guys are into the job, but I do see the other firehouses still here and there where they don't care.
This job will get you killed. You're not, driving for UPS here or, framing houses or whatever else. This job will get you killed, or worse yet, turned into a maimed cripple for the rest of your life. It's just got to be taken seriously. That's all there is to it.
It could be your fourth fire or your 400th fire. The job has a way of always humbling you. And that's the beauty of the job, is that when you get humbled, you get a moment to okay, let me reevaluate my career path. Let me reevaluate what I'm doing, the rights and the wrongs. But that's where humility comes in. When you can take that humbling moment and admit that, okay, this went a little sideways because maybe I wasn't into the job, or maybe because I looked at things a little bit differently. gives you a chance to realign, and that's the beauty of the job. But as long as you're on the right path, like you're going to make the mistakes, obviously, but
Yeah.
being into the job, you can avoid a lot more mistakes than if you're not being into the job, quote unquote. And again, not being a buff, right? Not taking vacations to go take pictures in the cities. Like people do that, that's fine. But when you're at work, you should be studying this job. I don't like the term blue collar. Everyone says this is a blue collar job. Yeah, we work with our hands, and one time it was
Yeah.
Irish immigrants, but this is a job of a student, and you have to be sharp. You have to be into the books, and you have to have the firefighter IQ of firefighting to be successful at it.
Yeah.
You know?
This is one problem I have because the generation that I was part of struggled for literally decades to turn this into a profession. You know, it was during my time on the job that college degrees in fire safety or, fire service management or any of the related topics first became available. And that was from guys putting in the work. I need to establish this. I'm going to the local college. We're going to work on this. We're going to get, so many guys from so many departments busted their ass to make this a respected profession. And now when I see guys, I don't like the term industry. I don't like the term blue collar because you're right that we do work with our hands. We get dirty, we get everything else, but it's still, in terms of knowledge, a profession.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not an assembly line. This is not piecework. It's not, learn basic trade skills and that's what you're going to do for the next. It is a profession that to be successful in it and to advance in it, you really need to know a lot. So, I have a problem with guys trying to more or less, I don't know, downgrade it,
Mm-hmm.
because whether they know it or not, and I'll guess that they probably do not know it, they are undoing a lot of work that a lot of guys spent decades accomplishing, putting into place.
Yeah.
So
That's a great point. I mean, just going through the people I know that you hold close to you and how intelligent they are with the fire service aspect, it's a lot of work that went into that.
Yeah.
Bobby comes to mind, like
yeah,
what he's done for the fire service on a global level.
yes,
It's
yes.
tremendous. So, and I know from speaking with him, and obviously he's in your world where you're sitting back and watching it being undone, and you're thinking, what is going on? We worked so hard to accomplish so much,
Yeah,
and it's slowly being undone, like you said.
yeah.
How do we combat that? How do we change that?
I don't know if we can, because times are what they are, and as usual, the fire service is a microcosm of greater society. I'm very lucky with the people I associate with and always have. Bobby, and I mentioned the guys from Newark earlier, and John Riker's another one, retired deputy chief. He's still out there on the circuit. He's my age, he's still out there on the circuit doing things, teaching. And, guys like that kind of feed off each other, which is why I tell the younger guys, you need to network. You're not living in a bubble. Your firehouse isn't a bubble. Your department's not a bubble. You need to get out and network, And that's what I did right from the beginning of my career. And it turned out that, as time went on, I really knew some incredible people.
Yeah.
And I'll always be grateful for that, So I don't know how to change it. A lot of it is just, I think, due to social media that, a lot of guys are trying to make a name for themselves and they're going on in all different directions. On social media, you see some good content, you do, from certain people, but there's so much bullshit out there.
Yeah.
And some of it's bullshit and some of it's dangerous bullshit. And some of it's just honestly stupid, But everybody's so busy trying to come up with that tool or that acronym or that quote or that invention, that's what their quest becomes, instead of being part of that team and learning the actual job and doing the actual job. And, one way I see this is, you know, and this kind of circles back to what I was saying before. We've got all this going on. How come we can't put out a fucking fire? But it's true. Guys are so busy on their own set of railroad tracks that they're not taking the time to really understand and learn about what's already out there. Like the cameras is a good example.
Yeah.
Right? Now, Bobby busted his ass on that committee. They get an NFPA certified camera and this and that. And these guys are out there using these little throwaway cameras thinking it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
Those cameras suck. But those guys don't even know enough about cameras to know that they suck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that way with other technology too. They take the salesman's word or they take the scientist's word. Not that those people don't have valid things to say, but you have to have a good enough head on your own shoulders and a good enough background in education so that you can challenge people, so that you can think for yourself. When somebody says, well, I just did, a 2-year study on this and that and the other thing tactic, and this is what you should do, you have to have enough head on your shoulders to be able to say, yeah, but here's the problem. You didn't look at this, you didn't look at that. Yeah, you're a PhD in this and that and your scientific method. You ain't a firefighter. Or if you are, you're not a very experienced one, and you've got no business telling us what we should be doing. You give us your input, we'll give you our input, we'll meet in the middle, we'll come up with something.
Well, that's the problem. Guys like Bobby Athanas, right? His intellect value in firefighting and the science behind it, and compiled with his real life fire floor experience. He's been to 1 million fires. On top of it, he's a student of the job to this day. That's almost impossible to find that triangle of success, right? So without a guy with his intellect value taking on the role of the camera or anything in that matter, that's where we start to lose the core values of what you just said. And we start getting people infiltrating into that, pushing back where he once had that on a global level, passing on the right information.
Yeah.
Guys are starting to infiltrate because as he retires, it opens up the platform for other people when they don't have all three of those. And how important is that, right? Like intellect value, real fire experience, and a student of the job.
And the cities and towns see dollar signs.
Yeah.
So a salesman comes in and he says, well, I got this $12,000 NFPA camera, or I got this $400 throwaway camera. Which one do you want? It's a no-brainer. I want the $400 throwaway. Well, where's the union saying, wait. That's a piece of shit. You're going to have to suck it up and spend the 12 grand, or the safety committee or whoever should be speaking up about that, but they don't even have the knowledge to know the difference. And that's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And it goes, further than just the camera. It goes into breathing apparatus, pass alarms, handy talkies, anything in the job. You can't be led around by what salespeople tell you. You have to know what's going on for yourself, do the research and understand it. And, somebody has to say, well, wait a minute. If the city tried to give us anything less than NFPA turnout gear or, NFPA fire apparatus, we'd be staging a job action. We'd be raising hell. Why are we letting them give us a non-NFPA thermal camera? Why are we letting them give us a non-NFPA handy talkie? It's not logical.
And I think another problem, we'll stay on the camera topic, is that cities and departments are buying these cameras and not providing the proper training.
Right.
So that's where you can get into a lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
I think it's important that when you do bring in training, absolutely have to vet those instructors,
Absolutely.
because going to fires in burn buildings isn't going to teach you how to use that camera
Right.
the proper way, you know?
Right.
So what are some of the other tactical decisions you think, or the tactical mishaps that you see? Again, you follow every fire out there. You're following every fire. So what's something that sticks out?
You know, where to start? I mean, you can talk about something as simple as hose line selection, all the way on up to proper exterior attack. And in some places it's going really well, and in some places it's down the tubes. Exterior attack is horrible across the board.
Yeah.
You know, nobody knows how to do that anymore. And we've spent years telling guys, I mean, decades, not even years, decades, don't stick the aerial stream through the hole in the roof. And what do you see constantly happening? They still do it.
There's probably some fire in America right now that's happening,
Yeah.
right?
And I mean, that's supposed to be firefighting 101, right? And we tell guys for heavy volume of fire, 2.5. But someplace they're stretching 1.75 inches.
So
You
let's
know?
talk about that. I have something that's on my mind, is that I'm seeing certain departments, not so much in this area, but there's been this like movement of that you stretch on every reported fire. Even if it's a class 3 or a fire alarm ringing, you're stretching the line, and then you'll figure it out if there's a fire or not. And that's kind of like went viral somewhat. I can't wrap my brain around that. On top of just like throwing hose in the street on every run makes for a really long 24 if you're any place doing any bit of running. But
Yeah.
beyond that, how can you stretch a line without sizing up the fire and making that decision of what size line and how far to stretch it?
Well, this is part of the whole thing, because it's not just about stretching the line. It's about what you said, that whole process of, you know, what could be going on inside, what are the possibilities, what's the size up. But it is you know, for a less active department, it's also a drill. You know, in your house, you guys may stretch, you know, a couple times a tour. In a slower house or a slower department, they can possibly go months or even the better part of a year without stretching a line. And that leads to chaos when they have to stretch a line. And it also leads to stupidity. You know, I'll give you an example. I was in a certain town when an alarm came in, and it was reported to be a fire in a townhouse. And when they got there, the whole first due engine just went into the townhouse to see what was going on. So if they walked into the townhouse and suddenly realized there was some kind of fire, now they had to scramble back outside, stretch a line, come in. Well, that's what happened. It was a fire originally in the fireplace. Problem with the chimney, it extended out of the chimney a little bit into the structure. So now there's a mad scramble to stretch the line while the fire's burning. So now my point would be, you got two choices here. Leave guys out on the engine and just the boss goes in to check it out. Or we need practice stretching lines. When we pull up at a structure, we're going to stretch. That doesn't mean we're going to commit the line. That doesn't mean we're going to take it inside, but we're going to maybe take it to the front door. We're going to be ready. Now, there's all kinds of variables. Large area building, maybe that's not a good idea, because maybe that's not the entrance you want to stretch to. Maybe you need to drive around back and stretch from there. So yeah, there's all these variables, but the average department, the average residential fire, where could that fire possibly be? It's in a 2.5-story frame somewhere. You're not going to go wrong by stretching 1.75 inches.
No, yeah, you're right.
Up to the door to be ready, right?
I just don't like what you kept saying there was variables. I feel there's too many variables to commit a line anywhere until we confirm what floor the fire's on,
Yeah.
right? Where the fire is located. And like you said, how are we going to access that? So since we changed our books, we were pretty straightforward on what size line
Yeah.
because of the building. Now it gives an opportunity to make good engine officers great engine officers because they can make a decision. Okay, I want an inch and three quarter for a taxpayer because it's just a bodega fire.
Yeah.
We have that ability now. So if companies are just stretching to stretch because it's a drill, if we're just stretching because it's a stretch to make it a drill, then I think that we're building a false sense of security that when you do turn the corner and you have to make a decision, you're not going to know what to do. Or you might resort back to that inch and three quarter, but maybe it was a 2.5 fire because you've drilled it that way.
First thing is, we're not actually committing the line. I'm just telling the guys, A, at the bare minimum, be ready to stretch, have guys at the engine. But B, I don't have a problem with stretching to the front door.
No.
You're not committing the line, you know? If the boss goes inside and finds that the best access is through the back door, okay, now take the line around back and go in that way. You know, it's already up to the building, just around the back or around the side, whatever. You're not committing it. You know, you should have enough line to go anywhere in that building. So that should not be a problem. You know what I mean? I don't have a problem with that. And believe me, these departments need work stretching. They really do. You know, it's fucked up. They need work stretching.
No, and something I do see is that these departments, when we speak these departments, just random departments that I've seen, they're drilling on a high angle, they're drilling on ropes, they're drilling a large area search,
Right.
but they can't stretch 3 lengths of inch and three quarter off a pre-connected. It's a problem. It's a real problem. And I don't
Yeah.
understand why we can't get good at stretching. And again, I'm not sure if the fire alarm run is the time to stretch the line. Sometimes, yes, but I don't think every single run you should put hose in the street. I think there's also a sense of pride in determining when you put the hose in the street and when not to. That, to me, makes a good engine company. Maybe that's old school thinking, but
Well, I think your circumstances are different in the city where the buildings are really vastly different and they're vastly variable among themselves.
Mhm.
I honestly believe a small town, I encourage you to stretch just because you need to work. Because I know towns, you know, around where I live, the town where I actually live, they actually get a decent amount of work. But a lot of the surrounding towns, if they see one job a year, they're lucky, right?
Yeah.
And when they get that job, it's a clusterfuck every time. It's never smooth, you know? So I really believe they need to get in that groove of responding, ready to go to work. And when they get there, do something. Don't commit. I get it, you know, and it's not for every building. I'm not telling these guys, you know, pull up at a self-storage and stretch a line to the door, because that might not be the right thing to do in a building like that. Or in a taxpayer, that might not be the right thing to do in a circumstance like that. But I think it's okay in a residential. I really do.
I can see the argument for a residential, absolutely. Maybe I'm just thinking in my terms of buildings, but I think that
There's too many variables where you work. I mean,
yeah. Well, that's the thing, though. I think you have to be careful when you throw the word variable in. Yeah, if it's not a 2.5 frame, then you got to be careful. Maybe hold off on stretching that line. But I see people that on the report of comes in for a fire alarm, they're laying hose in off the rig, supply lines.
Yeah, well, you know, that's
I can't wrap my right or wrong. I'm not saying that I can't. I don't think it's.
I don't think I advocate that, but I think I advocate, you know, stretch that hand line and be ready to go to work, you know, because in these small residential towns, there's usually not the variation that of either buildings or circumstances
Here you go.
that you have. Now, the other problem is,
how do you choose what pre-connect, though? If you don't know where the fire is, how do you choose what pre-connect? You always take the one with the most hose?
because again, this comes down to knowledge, because you have to learn how to estimate a stretch, okay? You have to be able to think, okay, it's one length to the front door of this place, just to, you know, pull something out of my ass. It's a residential setback, you know, it's going to be one length to the door. I need enough line to go anywhere in that building. I don't know where I'm going. And just because I start in one place doesn't mean I'm not going to end up in another place. So if it's a 2.5-story frame, I want to be able to go in any direction on any floor. That probably works out to minimum 3 lengths, maybe 4. And you have to learn how to estimate the stretches. I mean, depending on the size of the house. If it's, a split level or something like that, 3 lengths probably does it, If it's a big old Victorian, 4 lengths, but it's about learning how to estimate a stretch.
So that raises a good question. So when people don't know how to estimate a stretch because they rely on the pre-connect. They just take the pre-connect with the most hose, and that's their estimation.
Right.
I think because of pre-connects, and I think they serve a purpose. I do. Understaffed departments, I think it's a great setup to have a pre-connected line. I do believe it. Newark ran with pre-connects.
Yeah. But I mean, sometimes it's, a case of, well, I got 3 to choose from. I got 3 lengths, 4 lengths, or 5 lengths. So if I'm pulling up to a 2.5-story frame, is it the 5 lengths? No. Right? Now it's between the 2 and the 3 lengths. Or if it's a ranch house and it's, 25 feet from the sidewalk, maybe 2 lengths is going to do the whole job. You know what I mean? It's like, this is where these guys completely lack the knowledge. When you talk about estimating a stretch, a lot of guys think you're talking about a dead load, pulling line off the back of the rig and the control man or whatever you got in your department saying, oh, this looks like 6 lengths or this looks like 4 lengths. But estimating a stretch is more than that. It's learning which pre-connect to pull. It might not be a question of I'm flexible with a dead load here. I could do anything from 1 to 6 or even 8, depending on what kind of hose you use. But,
I think another variable that you have to consider is that how often do you go and you get a caller on the 3rd floor reporting a fire? You go to the 3rd floor and find out they're calling for a fire on the 6th floor. So now if you think you're going to the 3rd floor because that's what the caller is, well, now you just short stretched, right? So that's something to think about with the word variable is that I just think there's too many variables to commit a line to any building. Maybe a 2.5 for a ranch. That makes sense. That's what you're saying. But I think you got to be careful that gets blurred.
I'm agreeing, like if you've got 6 floors, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the town where they just put up some new condos that are a little bit elevated, but they have standpipes and everything. Whole nother subject.
Yeah.
But, for all practical purposes, there's nothing over 3 stories in the town. So you can't really go wrong. You can't really go too far wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're right in what you're saying in that, yeah, you can go to the 1st floor, 2nd floor, all of a sudden get that line upstairs.
Yeah. I mean, I have in the past, I've had the nozzle, 6-story H-type. You pull up, you smell the job, you have a job. People are coming down the fire escapes. You haven't found what floor. I don't wait for my officer to say start a line. I already started that line to the lobby and I'm waiting to tell me what wing we're going to, And that was, so when you have a fire, yes, there are times to just to start the line and then pause until we locate where we're bringing that line,
Yeah.
But I think that you have to be good to make those moves. And I say good as a company, as a unit, trusting your officer to make the decision, A wing, B wing, wherever it may be, isolated stairs, transverse stairs. These are all things when we start talking about the bigger buildings. But I guess you said.
But you're not getting good if you never do it. And in these small towns, they never do it. You know what I mean?
They should be doing it, not so much on the runs all the time, but maybe just go out and drill and stretch,
Well, it's tough to do that well, too, because part of, learning how to stretch lines and everything is getting inside, and you can't do that all the time on a response, but you can't do it all the time on a drill either. Guys need to, when they plan a hose stretch drill, try to get some kind of building where they'll let you take dry lines in. You're not going to charge them. Like maybe a school, or maybe you got some kind of industry in your town or something. Go talk to them and say, look, this is for your benefit, and learn how to get those lines inside. But, I'm, I'm going down with the ship on this. I watch these guys pull up at these, 1.5 and 2.5 story frames, and it's awful. It's awful.
Oh yeah.
And they, if they get used to getting that line off, even if it's only going to the front door, they don't commit until, yes, we need the line, or no, we don't need the line. If you never wet the line, what's the big deal reloading 2 lengths, 3 lengths, 4 lengths? It ain't no big deal. It goes right back on. And
I think it's a good drill.
At least guys get used to doing it,
I think it's a good drill, but I'm seeing it used as a tactic where it takes away the size up game now. We're just assuming there's a fire in the building. Then we're going through the motions of doing it. And I think you can get caught with your pants down doing that. I think you can get yourself in a bad situation by assuming rather than confirming certain things on a fire ground. You can't assume.
That's a command problem. You know what I mean? It's like everything in the fire service, from morale to tactics to strategy to training, everything in the fire service needs to be from the top down, not the bottom up. And this is where a lot of guys are getting fucked up. And this comes back to social media, because what all these guys they're firefighters, they're lieutenants, and they're talking like they're a chief of department, like they have that kind of voice, right? And it gets to be chaos after a while, because you really don't have that much to say about it. In your department, in reality, that shit comes from the top down, not from the bottom up. So, take the average department. It's not just a question of we're always going to stretch a line or we're not going to stretch a line. It's a drill or it's a procedure, whatever. The fire department itself, and this is a problem for volunteers, we're always changing officers. So it's tough to have continuity, right? But for any department, the culture and the procedures, this is why I believe in SOPs, because these departments that are always changing hands, or the new chief every year, every 2 years, get fucked up. You need to have SOPs, and the SOPs are not just for the guys riding the back step. They're for the incident commander on down. And this gets to where you're talking about, which is like, okay, we're going to get there, and for drill purposes or practice purposes, we're going to stretch the line, but we're not going to commit it. We're just going to get it off the rig. We're not going to commit it, right? Well, what else is going on at that point? Where's the company officer? Is he inside looking for the fire? Or is he doing a 360? I mean, this all has to be in your SOPs. And nothing is standalone. I think that's another problem. I realize I'm going from one thing to the next here, but this is how it works.
Yeah.
This is how it works. This leads to another problem. Guys look at things as standalone problems or standalone situations, and it almost never is. It's almost always an intricate web of different things that come together or fall apart. It's never just usually one factor, one thing. If the whole department, it's like the engine in your car, right? One cylinder, one spark plug is fucked up, the whole thing's out the window, right? It's no good to say, I installed that one spark plug properly, so the engine should be running great. Wait a minute, I put that alternator in there exactly according to instructions. The engine should be running great. I don't get it. No, the whole engine has to be correctly assembled, tuned up. Everything has to be working as one. And it's no different for us, From the chiefs on down, everybody has to know what they're doing, know what they're supposed to be doing. And in those circumstances, you can stretch that line to the front door as a practice. You're not committing it until you're, told, yes, we need it. No, we don't need it. If yes, where,
Well, I think what you're saying, that clarifies a lot, I think, for a lot of the listeners maybe, of what procedure versus drill. And I think that's got to be discussed. Like, is this your procedure? Is this your SOP that we're going to stretch at every run we go to from a fire alarm to an odor of smoke to a reported fire? Are we treating it the same? Or are we going to stretch the line as a drill and practice our stretch and not commit the line in case there is a fire? What about waiting until after we confirm there's no fire, then stretch the line? You know? So there's all variables that you can talk about, and I think it's important to clarify that, because I think that the next young generation of motivated firemen are getting bits and pieces off social media and not really talking about, is it a tactic, a procedure? All right, guys, thanks for listening to part 1 of our 2-part series with Pete Partridge, Newark, New Jersey, Rescue Company 1, SOC Battalion Chief. Stick around next week. We're going to have episode 45, the second half of this show with Pete Partridge. If you like the first one, you're going to love the second one. All right, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.